Ambassador Vethnar had spent 40 years learning to understand humans. He had read their books. He had watched their films. He had sat through countless meetings where they talked too fast and laughed too loud, and made promises that seemed impossible to keep. He thought he understood them. He believed he had finally figured out how their strange minds worked. He was completely wrong. The Corallian diplomat stood in his private quarters aboard Relay Station Gamma 7, staring out the viewport at the endless darkness of space. The station floated at the edge of Corallian territory, a meeting point between two civilizations that had only known each other for a century. It was supposed to be a symbol of cooperation, a bridge between worlds. Right now, it felt more like a dying ship waiting to sink. A loud clang echoed through the walls, followed by the familiar flicker of lights. Vethnar sighed. The station was old. It had been built by his people 80 years ago, back when the technology was considered advanced. Now it was falling apart piece by piece. The gravity plating in the eastern corridor had failed last week. 3 Corallian technicians had floated helplessly for 2 hours before anyone could restore power. The atmospheric processors made sounds that no machine should ever make. They wheezed and groaned like ancient creatures taking their final breaths, and the temperature control system had decided that the ideal environment was either freezing cold or burning hot, with no setting in between. Vethnar walked through the corridor toward the command center. He passed a section where the ceiling panels had been removed, exposing tangled wires that sparked occasionally. A young Corallian technician was trying to fix something with tools that were older than he was. "Any progress?" Vethnar asked. The technician looked at him with tired eyes. "I have stopped the sparking for now. But it will start again tomorrow." "It always does." Vethnar nodded and continued walking. This was the reality of Relay Station Gamma 7. Everything was temporary. Every repair was just a delay before the next failure. They had been living this way for years. The command center was a large, circular room filled with outdated consoles and flickering screens. Commander Katie Morgan stood near the main viewport, her arms crossed, her expression frustrated. She was the senior human officer aboard the station, responsible for the 32 humans who lived and worked here alongside the Corallian crew. Katie was a woman in her early 40s with short brown hair and sharp green eyes. She had served in space for 20 years, and Vethnar had come to respect her practical mind and calm nature. She did not panic. She did not complain. She simply solved problems with whatever tools she had available. But lately, even Katie seemed tired. "The air filter in Section 7 failed again," she said without turning around. "My people are using portable oxygen tanks until we can find replacement parts." Vethnar moved to stand beside her. "I apologize. Our maintenance supplies have been delayed for the 3rd time this month." Katie shook her head. "It's not your fault. This station is held together with good intentions and old tape. We both know it." She finally turned to look at him. "I'm submitting a request to Earth Command. We need help." "What kind of help?" "Basic stuff. Replacement air filters. New gravity plates for the Eastern Corridor. Maybe some updated lighting that doesn't give everyone headaches." She paused. "I'm keeping it simple. I don't want to ask for too much." Vethnar understood her thinking. Resources were limited. Both their governments had other priorities. Asking for too much might mean receiving nothing at all. It was better to be modest, better to be reasonable. "A sensible approach," he agreed. Katie returned to her console and began typing. Her request was straightforward and professional. She listed the essential items they needed, explained the current conditions, and asked politely for assistance at Earth Command's earliest convenience. She attached the relevant environmental reports and maintenance logs as evidence. When she finished, she sent the message and leaned back in her chair. "Now we wait," she said. "Probably a few weeks before they even acknowledge it. Then another few months before anything actually arrives. That is how these things work," Vethnar said. "Bureaucracy moves slowly on every world." Katie smiled slightly. "At least that's something our species have in common." Later that evening, Vethnar met with his assistant, a young Corallian named Tethriel. They sat in the diplomatic quarters, sharing a meal that had been prepared with limited supplies. The food was bland but filling. I reviewed the human commander's request, Tethril said. It was very reasonable, very measured. That is Commander Morgan's nature, Vethnar replied. She understands limitations. She does not ask for things she cannot have. Tethril tilted his head in the way Corellians did when they were thinking carefully. Do you believe Earth will respond? Eventually. Humans are reliable in their own chaotic way. They will send a small team with replacement parts. Perhaps in 3 or 4 months. We will manage until then. And if the station fails before then? Vethnar set down his eating utensil. It was a question he had asked himself many times. The honest answer was that he did not know. The station was deteriorating faster than they could repair it. Every week brought new problems. Every solution created new complications. We will adapt, he said finally. That is what we have always done. Tethril accepted this answer, though he did not seem satisfied by it. They finished their meal in silence. That night, Vethnar returned to his quarters and prepared for sleep. The lights flickered twice as he changed into his resting garments. The temperature dropped suddenly, then rose again. Somewhere in the distance, a pipe made a sound like metal screaming. He closed his eyes and tried to rest. Tomorrow would bring the same problems, the same struggles, the same slow decay of a station that had outlived its usefulness. Perhaps Commander Morgan's request would eventually bring help. Perhaps Earth would send a small shuttle with basic supplies. It was the most they could hope for. Vethnar fell asleep thinking about reasonable expectations and modest requests. He dreamed of nothing in particular. He had no idea that in just 12 hours, everything he believed about humans would be shattered completely. The darkness of space continued outside his viewport, vast and silent and full of secrets. And somewhere far away, across the empty void between stars, something was already moving toward them. Something big, something that would change everything. But for now, the station slept. The lights flickered. The machines groaned. And the universe kept its secrets for just a little while longer. The alarm woke Vethnar from a dreamless sleep. It was not the usual alarm, not the familiar whine of another system failure, or the gentle chime of a routine notification. This was the proximity alert, the loud, urgent sound that meant something large was approaching the station. Vethnar threw off his sleeping covers and rushed into the corridor. Other Corellians were emerging from their quarters, their faces showing the same confusion he felt. The alarm continued to blare as he made his way toward the observation deck. He found Commander Katie Morgan already there, standing at the main viewport with her mouth hanging open. She did not move. She did not speak. She simply stared at whatever was outside. Vethnar stepped beside her and looked through the transparent wall. His heart stopped. Outside, filling the entire field of view, was a fleet. Not a small group of ships. Not a repair shuttle with a few engineers. This was an armada of human vessels, arranged in perfect formation against the backdrop of stars. The lead ship was enormous. It was a carrier, at least 2 kilometers long, with the name Atlas Rising painted across its hull in letters big enough to read from the station. Flanking it were 6 smaller frigates, their weapons systems visible but powered down. Behind them floated 2 massive construction platforms, each one carrying enough equipment to build a small city. And at the very back, folded into transport configuration like some kind of mechanical flower waiting to bloom, was what appeared to be an entire prefabricated shipyard. What? Vethnar could not finish the sentence. His voice had abandoned him. Katie shook her head slowly. I asked for air filters, she whispered. I asked for 3 gravity plates. The communication console behind them began to beep. Someone was requesting contact. Katie walked to it like a person in a dream and pressed the acceptance button. A human face appeared on the screen. The man was perhaps 50 years old, with gray hair cut short and a friendly smile that seemed completely out of place given the situation. He wore the uniform of an engineer, not a soldier, and there was a coffee stain on his collar. Commander Morgan, the man said cheerfully. Captain Danny Holt, Army Corps of Engineers, Space Division. We received your maintenance request. Katie stared at him. My maintenance request? Yes, ma'am. High Command flagged it Priority 1 as soon as it came through. We reviewed the environmental reports from your station and realized you folks have been living in conditions that would make a prison ship look comfortable. Danny's smile remained perfectly pleasant. We're here to fix that, Captain, Katie said carefully. I asked for replacement parts. Basic supplies. This is... She gestured toward the viewport. This is a fleet. Danny nodded as if she had made an excellent point. Yes, ma'am. We don't do things halfway. When we saw the state of your station, we knew a few spare parts weren't going to cut it. That place is held together with hope and rust. No offense meant to our Corallian friends, of course. He glanced to the side, probably at another screen. We brought everything we need to do this right. Vethnar stepped forward. Captain Holt. I am Ambassador Vethnar, of the Corallian Collective. May I ask what exactly you intend to do? Danny's face brightened even more. Ambassador. Pleasure to meet you, sir. As for what we intend to do, well, we're going to fix up your station. Give it a complete overhaul. New systems, new infrastructure, new everything. Should take about a day. A day? Vethnar repeated. Maybe less. My crews are pretty efficient. Danny checked something off screen. We're requesting permission to dock and begin work. We'll try to keep disruption to a minimum, but I won't lie to you. It's going to get busy around here. Katie looked at Vethnar. He looked back at her. Neither of them knew what to say. Permission granted. Katie finally managed. Excellent. We'll begin immediately. Holt out. The screen went dark. The observation deck fell silent. Outside, the fleet began to move. Within minutes, the first shuttles launched from the carrier. They moved in coordinated patterns, surrounding the station like bees around a hive. Smaller ships detached from the construction platforms, carrying equipment that Vethnar could not identify. Tethril appeared at Vethnar's side, his eyes wide with disbelief. Ambassador, what is happening? I am not entirely certain, Vethnar admitted, but I believe the humans are going to fix our station. With an entire fleet? Apparently so. The first docking clamps connected with a solid thunk that echoed through the station. Moments later, the sound of boots filled the corridors. Human voices called out to each other, organized and purposeful. Equipment was being moved. Tools were being unpacked. Katie turned away from the viewport. I should go meet them. Figure out what exactly they're planning. I will join you, Vethnar said. They walked together toward the main docking bay, passing groups of confused Corallians who had gathered to watch the chaos. The humans were already everywhere. They wore bright orange suits with reflective strips, and they moved with a kind of energy that seemed impossible for beings who had just traveled across space. At the docking bay, they found Captain Danny Holt directing traffic. He held a datapad in one hand and a cup of coffee in the other, somehow managing to do three things at once while maintaining his cheerful expression. Commander Morgan, Ambassador. He waved them over. Good timing. Let me introduce you to some of my team leaders. He pointed to a tall woman with dark skin and a serious face. Sergeant Laura Vance, structural team. She'll be handling your support beams and framework. Laura nodded professionally. We've already scanned your station's skeleton. Honestly, I'm amazed it's still standing. We'll have new beams in place within 6 hours. Danny pointed to a quiet man with graying hair and grease-stained hands. Chief Engineer Ben Castillo. Life support. He's the best in the fleet. Ben offered a small wave. Your atmospheric processors are antiques. I've got new units that will give you air so clean you'll think you're on a mountain. And this, Danny continued, is Specialist Ryan Torres. Power distribution. Ryan was younger than the others, with dark hair and bright eyes. Your electrical system is a fire waiting to happen. No offense. I'll have it completely rewired by tonight. Vethnar listened to each introduction with growing amazement. These humans had not come to patch holes and replace broken parts. They had come to rebuild everything. Captain Holt, he said slowly. This level of response seems extraordinary for a simple maintenance request. Danny shrugged. Maybe. But here's the thing, Ambassador. You folks asked for help. That means something to us. When someone we work with has a problem, we don't put a bandage on it and walk away. We fix it properly. He took a sip of his coffee. Besides, your station is important. It's a bridge between our peoples. It deserves to be something we're all proud of. Before Vethnar could respond, someone called out for Danny's attention. The captain excused himself and jogged away, already giving orders to another group of engineers. Katie watched him go. "Well," she said quietly, "this is not what I expected." Vethnar could only nod in agreement. Around them, the humans continued to pour into the station, bringing tools and materials, and an energy that seemed to fill every corridor with purpose. The work was only beginning, and nobody was planning to sleep tonight. Vethnar had witnessed many strange things in his 40 years as a diplomat. He had seen wars end with a handshake. He had watched civilizations crumble and rebuild. He had been present for first contact between species who had never imagined each other's existence. None of it had prepared him for watching humans work. The transformation of Relay Station Gamma 7 began within the first hour. Sergeant Laura Vance and her structural team moved through the corridors like a wave of controlled destruction. They did not patch the old support beams. They did not reinforce the damaged sections. They simply removed everything and started fresh. Vethnar stood in what used to be Deck 4 and watched in amazement as humans stripped away decades of aging metal. They worked in teams of 4, each group responsible for a different section. Their movements were coordinated without being rigid. They talked to each other constantly, making jokes and sharing instructions at the same time. One young man accidentally dropped a heavy beam on his own foot. He cursed loudly, hopped around for a moment, and then continued working as if nothing had happened. His teammates laughed at him. He laughed back. The beam was installed perfectly. "This is their standard procedure?" Tethril asked, standing beside Vethnar with a look of confusion on his face. "Apparently so," Vethnar replied. Sergeant Vance approached them, wiping sweat from her forehead with a dirty cloth. "Ambassador, we're making good progress. Should have the new framework in place by midnight." "Sergeant, if I may ask," Vethnar said carefully, "how long did it take to construct this station originally?" Laura thought about it. "Based on the design? Probably 3 or 4 years. And you intend to rebuild it in one day?" She smiled. It was not an arrogant smile. It was the expression of someone who was very good at her job and knew it. "We're not building from scratch. We're upgrading. Big difference. Plus, we've got 400 people working in shifts. Nobody sleeps until the job is done." She excused herself and jogged back to her team, already shouting instructions about load-bearing walls. Vethnar moved through the station, observing the chaos. Every corridor held a different scene of productive madness. In the engineering section, Chief Ben Castillo had completely removed the old atmospheric processors. They sat in a pile near the airlock, ancient machines that had served their purpose for 8 decades. In their place, Ben was installing something that looked almost beautiful. The new life support system was sleek and compact, with smooth lines and quiet fans. It hummed softly instead of groaning. The air around it already felt cleaner somehow. The old units were working at maybe 40% efficiency, Ben explained when he noticed Vethnar watching. Half the air they processed was getting recycled before it reached the living quarters. People were breathing the same tired oxygen over and over. He patted the new machine affectionately. "This baby will give you fresh air everywhere. Temperature control, too. No more freezing in the morning and sweating at night." "It seems very advanced," Vethnar observed. Ben shrugged. "It's standard equipment for human stations now. We've had this technology for 20 years. Honestly, it's criminal that you folks have been living with those antiques for so long." He paused, looking embarrassed. "No offense meant to the collective, of course." "None taken," Vethnar said, and he meant it. He was too amazed to feel insulted. In the power section, Specialist Ryan Torres had opened every wall panel in a 100-meter corridor. Wires hung everywhere like colorful vines. It looked like complete chaos, but Ryan moved through it with perfect confidence, connecting cables and testing circuits with practiced speed. A young Corellian technician stood nearby, watching with fascination. It was the same worker Vethnar had spoken with earlier, the one who had been fighting a losing battle against sparking wires. "You see how I'm grounding this?" Ryan said to the Corallian, pointing at a specific connection. "That's the key. You ground everything properly, and you don't get random power surges. The original wiring here skipped that step in a dozen places." The Corallian nodded eagerly, absorbing every word. Ryan handed him a tool and guided his hands to the correct position. "There you go. Now you try." Vethnar watched the human teach his people without being asked. It was not part of Ryan's assignment. Nobody had ordered him to train Corallian workers. He simply did it because he saw someone who wanted to learn. Hours passed. The work continued without stopping. Vethnar found a quiet corner and watched a human woman carry a steel beam on her shoulder. In her other hand, she held a sandwich, which she bit into periodically. The beam probably weighed as much as she did. She did not seem to notice. "They are not sleeping," Tethril said, appearing at Vethnar's side again. His voice was filled with wonder and a little bit of fear. "I have been tracking their shifts. When one team finishes, another takes over. The work never stops. How long has it been? 12 hours. And they show no signs of slowing." Vethnar had read about human endurance in academic texts. He knew they were a stubborn species, capable of pushing through exhaustion when motivated. But reading about something and witnessing it were very different experiences. Commander Katie Morgan found him near the observation deck. She looked exhausted but also energized, as if the chaos around her had awakened something she had forgotten she possessed. "They've already finished 3 decks," she reported. "New gravity plating, new lighting, new everything. And they're just getting started." She shook her head slowly. "I've served with humans my whole career. I thought I knew what we were capable of. But this is something else." Vethnar finished for her. "Yeah." She watched a team of engineers jog past, carrying equipment she could not identify. Something else entirely. A shout came from somewhere deeper in the station. Not a cry of alarm, but a celebration. Vethnar heard humans cheering, clapping, whistling. He and Katie walked toward the sound. They found Sergeant Vance's team gathered around a newly installed support beam. It was the final piece of the structural framework. The backbone of the station had been completely replaced in just 12 hours. Laura stood in the center of her crew, grinning broadly. "That's Deck 4 through 11, people. Framework complete. Life support next." She raised her hand. "Who's tired?" "Nobody," her team shouted back. "Who's done?" "Nobody." "Then get moving. We've got a station to finish." The crew scattered like leaves in a wind, already heading toward their next assignments. Vethnar watched them go, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. 40 years of diplomatic experience. Nothing had prepared him for this. And the night was only half over. 18 hours after the fleet arrived, Vethnar stepped out of his temporary quarters and into a station he did not recognize. The corridor where he stood had been dark and cramped yesterday. The walls had been stained with age. The lights had flickered constantly. The floor panels had been loose and uneven. Now everything was different. The walls were clean and smooth, painted in soft colors that soothed the eyes. The lighting was warm and steady. Not the harsh, artificial glow he had grown used to, but something gentler, something almost like sunlight. The floor beneath his feet was solid and level. When he walked, he did not hear the familiar creaking of old metal. He heard nothing but the soft sound of his own footsteps. The gravity was perfect. Not almost perfect. Not acceptable. Perfect. Every step felt exactly right. For the first time in years, Vethnar did not have to adjust his movements to compensate for uneven gravitational fields. He walked slowly through the corridor, afraid that moving too fast might break the spell. Everything around him felt new, fresh, alive in a way the old station had never been. He found Commander Katie Morgan standing at the entrance to the diplomatic wing. She had tears in her eyes. She did not seem aware of them. "They finished everything," she said quietly. "Everything. I just walked through the human quarters. There are windows now. Real windows with real views. The beds are new. The furniture is new. There's a reading room and a kitchen and... Her voice cracked slightly. There's a coffee machine that actually works. Vethnar did not fully understand the significance of coffee machines, but he understood the emotion behind her words. After years of living with failure and decay, the sudden presence of something functional felt like a miracle. They walked together into the diplomatic wing. Vethnar stopped breathing. Where there had once been a single, cramped conference room, there was now an entire cultural exchange center. The space was huge, divided into sections that served different purposes while remaining connected. Each area flowed naturally into the next. On the left side was a Corellian meditation chamber. Someone had researched their customs because the room was designed exactly according to tradition. Low lighting, soft surfaces, crystal sculptures positioned to catch the light in specific patterns. It was more beautiful than the meditation chambers on the Corellian homeworld. On the right side was a human recreation hall. It had comfortable chairs and entertainment screens and game tables. There was a small bar with drinks from Earth, each bottle carefully labeled. There was even a section dedicated to human musical instruments, waiting for anyone who wanted to play. In the center was a shared dining facility. The kitchens were equipped for both species' dietary needs. Corellian cooking equipment sat beside human appliances. The tables were designed at heights that worked for both races. The chairs could be adjusted to accommodate different body shapes. How did they know? Katie whispered. How did they know what we needed? A voice answered from behind them. We asked. They turned to find Captain Danny Holt standing in the doorway. He looked exhausted now, his earlier cheerfulness replaced by the satisfied tiredness of someone who had worked beyond their limits. His uniform was covered in dust and grease. His coffee cup was empty. We have cultural advisors in the fleet, Danny explained. People who study how different species live. When we started this project, we brought them in to consult. They researched Corellian traditions, talked to some of your people, figured out what would make everyone comfortable. He shrugged. Seemed like the right thing to do. Vethnar turned in a slow circle, taking in every detail of the space around him. The art on the walls showed scenes from both Earth and Corellia. The colors were balanced. The design felt harmonious. Nothing was out of place. You did all of this in 18 hours, he said. 20 by now, I think. Lost track. Danny scratched his head. We're wrapping up the final systems now. Power distribution just came online. Life support is running at full capacity. Should have everything finished in another 2 or 3 hours. Katie took a step toward him. Captain, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Danny straightened slightly. Of course. Why? Katie's voice was thick with emotion. Why all of this? This station is a minor outpost on the edge of nowhere. We're not strategically important. We're not politically significant. We're just a small group of people trying to do our jobs in a place that was falling apart. She gestured at the beautiful space around them. This must have cost your government a fortune. The resources, the personnel, the time, all of it. Why would anyone authorize this? Danny was quiet for a long moment. He seemed to be thinking about how to answer. When he spoke, his voice was gentle. Commander, I've been doing this job for 25 years. I've built stations and ships and colonies on worlds you've never heard of. I've worked with humans and aliens and species that don't even have names yet. And in all that time, I've learned one thing. He paused. When someone asks for help, they usually need more than they're asking for. Katie shook her head. That doesn't explain the fleet. The reconstruction. All of this. Sure it does. Danny smiled tiredly. You asked for air filters. But what you needed was a functioning home. A place where you and your people could live with dignity. A place where you didn't have to fight the building just to do your jobs. He looked around the diplomatic center with something like pride. If you have host, this station is supposed to be a bridge between humans and Corellians. That's important. That matters. And important things deserve to be done right. Vethnar finally found his voice. Captain Holt, in all my years as a diplomat, I have never witnessed anything like this. Your generosity is beyond what I can express. Danny shook his head. It's not generosity, Ambassador. It's just who we are. When humans see a problem, we fix it. When we see something broken, we rebuild it. And when we see friends living in conditions they don't deserve. He shrugged again. That simple human gesture that carried so much meaning. We do something about it. He excused himself then, saying he needed to oversee the final installations. He walked away with the slow steps of a man who had not slept in 2 days but would not stop until the work was done. Katie and Vethnar stood alone in the diplomatic center. Neither spoke. There were no words adequate for the moment. Around them, the station hummed with new life. Clean air flowed through pristine corridors. Perfect gravity held everything in place. Lights glowed warmly against walls that had been old and now were new. Everything had changed. Everything was better. And somewhere deep in his chest, Vethnar felt something he had not expected to feel. Something that felt remarkably like hope. The fleet departed after 23 hours. Vethnar stood on the observation deck and watched them go. The carrier Atlas Rising led the formation, followed by the frigates and construction platforms. The prefabricated shipyard, which had never been needed, folded back into transport configuration and slipped into the procession like a giant mechanical flower closing its petals. One by one, the ships engaged their faster-than-light drives. They stretched into lines of light, impossibly thin, impossibly bright, and then they were gone. The darkness of space returned, empty and silent as before. But the station they left behind was anything but empty. Relay Station Gamma 7 now glowed with life. Every viewport showed warm light. Every system worked perfectly. Every corridor was clean and welcoming. The old station had been a place of survival. The new station was a home. Tethril joined Vethnar at the viewport. The young Corallian had not slept either, spending the entire night watching the humans work. His eyes were tired, but his expression was filled with wonder. I do not understand them, Tethril admitted. Vethnar did not respond immediately. He was thinking about everything he had witnessed over the past day. The coordinated chaos. The relentless energy. The genuine kindness that had motivated every action. The humans had not rebuilt the station for glory or reward. They had done it because someone needed help. The Corallians have a philosophy, Vethnar finally said. It has guided our people for 10,000 years. Do what is required. No more. No less. Be efficient. Be measured. Conserve resources for the challenges ahead. He paused, watching the stars. It is a wise philosophy. It has served us well. But, Tethril prompted, but the humans have a different philosophy. Vethnar turned to face his assistant. When someone they care about has a problem, they do not simply solve the problem, they ensure the problem can never exist again. They rebuild. They improve. They give more than was asked for, more than was expected, more than seems reasonable. He shook his head slowly. It is wasteful by our standards. Inefficient. Perhaps even foolish. Tethril frowned. Then why does it feel like wisdom? Vethnar smiled. It was a rare expression for him, one he saved for moments of genuine insight. Because sometimes, the most efficient thing is also the coldest thing, and sometimes the wisest thing is also the most generous thing. He looked around at the beautiful station that now surrounded them. The humans did not give us air filters. Tethril. They gave us a message. They said, "You matter to us. Your comfort matters. Your happiness matters. Your ability to live with dignity in this place matters." That is a powerful message. It is the most powerful message, Vethnar agreed. And they delivered it not with words, but with actions. With 23 hours of work that they did not have to do. With resources they did not have to spend. With kindness they did not have to show. They stood in silence for a while, watching the stars. Far away, aboard the Atlas Rising, Captain Danny Holt sat in his small office and filed his mission report. He was exhausted beyond description. His hands shook slightly as he typed. His eyes kept trying to close. Under the section labeled, Resources Expended, he listed everything. 17 trillion credits. 400 personnel. 23 hours of continuous labor. Enough materials to build a small city. Under the section labeled, Mission Outcome, he wrote a single word. Satisfactory. He paused, reading what he had written. It seemed inadequate somehow. The mission had been more than satisfactory. They had transformed a dying station into something beautiful. They had helped people who had been struggling for years. They had built a bridge between two civilizations. But Danny was a simple man, and simple men did not write poetry in official reports. Satisfactory would have to be enough. He submitted the document and allowed himself to close his eyes. Within seconds, he was asleep. Back on the station, Commander Katie Morgan sat in her new quarters and composed her own report to Earth Command. She thanked them for their response to her maintenance request. She noted, with careful understatement, that the work had exceeded expectations. She described the new systems, the improved facilities, the cultural exchange center that would serve as a symbol of cooperation between species. She wrote about Captain Holt and his team, about their professionalism and their kindness, and their refusal to stop until everything was perfect. When she finished, she added a personal note at the end. It was not required. It would probably be filed away and forgotten. But she needed to say it anyway. I have served in space for 20 years, she wrote. I have seen the best and worst of what humans can do. Today, I saw something I will never forget. Today, I saw what we are capable of when we choose to be generous. Today, I am proud to be human. She sent the report and then sat quietly, looking around at her new home. The walls were smooth, the lights were warm, the air smelled clean and fresh. She could hear the gentle hum of perfect machinery doing its job without complaint. It was beautiful. 3 weeks later, the Corallian Collective formally requested a diplomatic expansion. They wished to establish new stations, new partnerships, new connections with Earth. The official reason was a desire to learn about human engineering practices, to study how their construction techniques could be applied to Corallian projects. But Vethnar knew the real reason. He had written about it in his own report to the collective leadership. The humans are not what we believed, he wrote. They are not merely efficient partners or useful allies. They are something rarer and more valuable. They are a species that understands the importance of kindness. They are a species that gives more than is required, more than is expected, more than seems reasonable. They are a species worth knowing. He paused before writing his final sentence. I recommend we learn from them. Not just their technology, not just their methods, but their philosophy. The philosophy that says, when someone asks for help, you give them more than they asked for. The philosophy that says efficiency without compassion is not truly efficient at all. He submitted the report and walked to his new meditation chamber. The crystals caught the light perfectly. The surfaces were soft beneath his feet. The air was clean and warm. Outside his window, the stars continued their eternal dance. Somewhere among them, humans were building and creating and helping and giving more than anyone had any right to expect. They were a strange species. They were an absurd species. They were, in their own chaotic and unreasonable way, perhaps the wisest species Vethnar had ever known. And he was grateful, more grateful than he could express, that they had chosen to answer one small request for air filters with something extraordinary, something human, something kind.